This is what we are. We are.
Oh, I'm going to give you a hug. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. Oh, God, it's 5 o'clock, no response. Okay, this is not going well. I'm going to do something that I don't tend to do when I stand up to speak, and I'm going to do it because I'm actually breaking myself. I'm shitting myself. So, oh God, my mom's going to hear this. So I'm going to sing for you. And I'm going to do that so that we can all come back into this room. And if I sing badly, it doesn't matter because I'm here for my talk, but I'm going to do something that scares me even more than talking to you. Thank you. You haven't heard me yet. Birds flying high, you know how I feel. What's the next verse? Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, and I'm feeling. All right. Okay. Oh, let me this. Can't decide what to be. Hi, everyone. My name's Eliza Anyangwe. And I don't know how to define myself, so I'm really grateful for that presentation we had before. But I guess I'm here, and Andres and his team found me because I'm now doing this crazy thing called the Nzinga Effect with a beautiful black woman who's in the audience somewhere called Mutsa. She's all in purple today. She's like a vision of purple, so you will find her. Oh, yeah, she's also sarcastic. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about this project that we are doing and why we're doing it, but I thought I'd start with a question. So, do you decide your labels, or did someone else decide them for you? My mother likes to tell me a story. These days, she tells my friends a story about me to try and get people to understand a bit better who I am. So while she was doing her PhD in Tulane University in the States, I was 0 to 3. And at some point along there, my big brother and I went with my aunt, who was looking after us, to the laundrette, which was probably a few blocks from where we lived. And she tells the story of how little Eliza, maybe at 2.5, maybe 3, decided she'd had enough of waiting around the laundrette and decided to take her black ass home. And so I walked home, apparently, as the story goes, and didn't tell anybody I had left. And my mom arrived home to find me sweating because I hadn't taken off my cardigan and just being on my own. So she tells that story. Then she tells the second story about back in Cameroon, where I'm from. My grandmother, who was a headmistress of a school, had an event. And at this event, they, as in Cameroonian culture, they start by serving the adults first. And they made an announcement that the buffet is open and the adults will eat first. And little Eliza, probably around the time we had just come back from the States, said, well, that's really unfair. Children eat less, so they should go first. And my mom tells these stories because she says they summarize my personality. I'm deeply independent, and I have a really strong sense of justice. And you will see in a minute why these things are relevant, but they are the labels that I guess I carry around, that Eliza is an independent person, and Eliza has a strong sense of justice. So I wonder what labels you carry around. And how much are the labels that you carry ones that you have chosen for yourself or ones that have been chosen for you? That picture is of the Hottentot Venus, as she was called, a woman from Southern Africa who many centuries ago, 1810, that drawing was made because of the size of her derriere in a world very different to the one Kim Kardashian inhabits. She was on show for the size of her butt. And that was not a label she chose for herself. And we know that throughout history, actually, that black people have had their bodies objectified, they've had their height, their weight, the skin, the color of their hair, And yet we don't know so many of these stories. Very few people recognize or know that actually the first European genocide was one that was perpetrated against people in Namibia. And that story is less told. And actually the work I do a lot is asking the questions of why. So, because the labels we carry are often decided by other people, I like to remind myself of this. So this is the mantra I've been rehearsing to myself today. I'm like, I want to carry myself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. I want to kind of just swagger with that kind of like, I'm going to finish school, then I'm going to get a job, then my life is going to mean something. Then, of course, I'm going to get married to that hot chick in that magazine I was looking at. Like, have you ever been in a club? Girls are going to know this, right? And you're just minding your own damn business, and then some guy walks up to you and he is just not your cup of tea at all. And you're just like, why? You saw me, you saw you. Women don't do that. Women look at a guy and they think, oh, he's out of my league, he's too good, he's this or that or the other. And that's often because of how we've been socialized, that sense of actually women are constantly in competition with each other, and men can attain anything they aspire to. So I don't know who said it, but I like that expression. I want to carry myself with the confidence of a mediocre white man. And all of that has led me on this journey from getting to England when I was 17 to go to university in Liverpool, not wanting to do anything with international development, but back to that strong sense of justice, I ended up working in the development sector. And then realizing that actually aid workers had a narrative about Africa, about the continent where I'm from, that I just didn't identify with. I thought maybe being a journalist would be the way to speak truth to power. So I kind of tripped and fell into journalism and ended up working at The Guardian, where after 6 years, I became an editor covering international development. And even there, I thought, actually, now I'm the gatekeeper. I can open up the doors to stories that are different to the ones that I've seen and read forever. I have a stat for you that's going to put into context some of the stuff I'm saying about stories. So 1 in 4 stories, and this is just broadly about women, 1 in 4 people of whom stories are written about in the media, so whether that is broadcast, radio, digital, or etc., are stories of women. So 3 out of every 4 stories are stories about men. Only 30% of speaking roles in at the top list, the top 500 films, I can't remember what year this is, but come and find me at the end, I can give you the reference, were actual speaking parts for women. So only 30% of speaking roles were roles for women. And then, because we live in a society where actually that has been tainted by the history of slavery and colonialism, etc., whether you are from Beijing to Bahia, that history means that actually the darker you are, the lower down the rung of society that you're on. And this speaking and seeing the world in this way, and even at The Guardian, not actually having that much power to change the narrative because I was working within a dominant system, I decided to leave The Guardian to go freelance, but to also start a platform called the Nzinga Effect. We named it after Queen Nzinga, who is that woman on the right-hand side. And I'd never heard of Nzinga's story. I grew up in 10 countries on 3 continents. I feel very proudly Pan-African. But I didn't know that there was a woman who had existed in what is now Angola, who was a negotiator. She was multilingual. She negotiated with the Portuguese when they came. She won battle against them. There's a brilliant story of her meeting the Portuguese governor, and he has 1 chair for him because he's a white man, and she was supposed to sit on the floor. And the story goes that she makes her aides form a chair with their bodies, and she sits on them so that she can look him in the eye. And I thought, what a badass woman. And so I was trying to think about what to name my organization, this media company that I wanted to start, this entity to tell African women's stories. And Nzinga just struck me as the exact type of person that actually, if women's stories are missing, and even more so Black women's stories are missing, and if it's African stories from the continent of Africa and the diaspora, as I said, from, whether you're from Bahia or Colombia or Afro-Mexicana, all those stories are not very well known, and lots of those histories are the same, then we needed a platform that was dedicated to telling our stories, not to each other, but to the world. I keep telling our team that if a 14-year-old boy in Adelaide reads one of our stories and shares them, he shares them because of the quality of the storytelling, because he connects with the humanness of the story, and not because it's stories about a Black African woman. So this is what the Nzinga Effect exists to do. Where is my time? 10 minutes. Ooh, rattling off very quickly. Okay. So this experiment, I guess, this journey began in December 2014. And we've been trying to understand how do we create something that is different, that goes beyond labels, but is also within a dominant system. So I have to eat, I have to pay rent. I think somebody else said that before. London is a very expensive city. But because of this sense of justice, I've actually tripped again and fell into different type of work. So as well as starting Nzinga, I'm the media director of an activist collective called The Rules. And The Rules exist to connect the dots between the root causes of poverty, climate change, and inequality. So essentially, we're basically trying to say to people like, poverty doesn't happen by chance, inequality doesn't happen by chance. There's a dominant system that creates all of these problems. And actually, we're trying to bring down that system, we're trying to dismantle that system, and at the same time, we have to function within it. And Mutsa, who's in the audience, and I often think about that when we're trying to build Nzinga. We think, okay, we want to go beyond the labels. We want to be an organization, a media entity, but we do not want to be set up in the way of digital organizations from the past. We want to be a collective, we want to be a team, but we don't want everyone to have to work in an office. I am the founder, so I guess in a sense there's a hierarchy when I hire people, but at the same time, I don't want a top-down structure. So how do we do something that is both collaborative rather than competitive? What does a feminist organization look like? What does a post-label organization look like? So part of, I guess, my presentation is about asking for help from all you beautiful people. It's about having those conversations. So in Nzinga, we want to be about African stories because we think that, as the video shows before, you can only really move beyond your label if you have been identified within it. There's a sort of parable that comes out of the story of what is his name? The guy with the reindeer with the red nose, Rudolph, that one. It's not my history, so. There are no reindeers in Cameroon. Rudolph, the story of Rudolph and how his red nose was, a source of sadness and exclusion, and then he was on the inside. And then I read somewhere, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it said something like, difference is only accepted when it can be monetized. Like if there is an advantage, like, yo, Rudolph, we can't see, where are you? And we saw that with Pepsi, right? The mistake that they made, and the whole notion of activism being cool for advertising and difference being cool. So actually, I'm not cynical about it, but I'm just like, okay, when we start to think we are beyond labels, it's actually because we are trying to co-opt them for our own purposes. But these are questions that we're asking. So how can we be beyond African, whereas identifying that Africa as a continent? I still hear in the news people talk about going to Africa, or I remember being 14 and going on a school trip to France, and an Italian boy asked me if I'd swam here, and that was not that long ago. Or how do we go beyond being female when actually so many people have their identities determined for them? Same as being Black, or having a startup. We're trying to find money for this organization that we're trying to run, etc. But how do we do all of those things, being an employee or an employer? So here's where we are today. We were scrambling to get it done. We were like, shit, I'm gonna go give a talk. If we don't have a site that's live, that's gonna be pants. So we've been working very hard to get that website up because we've been collecting different stories. That website is now live. And I was thinking, actually, what is the message I want to leave you with? Because actually, the point is not to depress you, even though everyone is awfully quiet. So I guess the question is to ask, or the point is to ask more questions, is to think about how do we claim, what do we think that we know? And what do we think that we know about other people? And what are the labels that we think that, we've moved beyond? Whereas other people are just trying to get within the dominant system. They're just trying to get recognized by that system. They're just trying to have their culture and their language and their hair and all of these things that can be appropriated by others, recognized as being part of theirs, something that they can hold on to. So our strapline is one that I want to leave you with for the rest of the IAM Weekend, is that actually not just us at Nzinga, but all of you have stories. And that what I want is not just more Black women or more of any one type of label. I really genuinely believe that diversity means that all of us are other, rather than there is a dominant, and then we're going to try and bring you in. I'm really well past assimilation right now. So I really want to know more about your stories, as you have been so patient to listen to mine. And that is, I guess, the message, or the point of my message, which is share your story and inspire a generation. We're trying to do so. We hope you join us in doing the same. Thank you.
In randomness, we trust.